Welcome back to another episode of Local Search Tuesdays. This week I'm sharing my slides from the recent Digital Marketing Strategies Conference in Austin. Before I get into this week's episode, I need to give a special shout out. You may not have noticed in last week's episode, but I'm rocking an awesome new bow tie. I picked this up a few weeks ago, and I had to give a special shout out to Chieko in Japan this week. She hand-stitched this one-of-a-kind bow tie from one of her family's ceremonial kimonos. Super rad, right? So anyway, I was down in Austin a few weeks ago for Brian Pash's Digital Marketing Strategies Conference in its new city after moving from Napa Valley. It's always a great conference, and we had some amazing chats with dealers. And as always, I wanted to share my slides with you. So here they are. Welcome to Ant-Man's Guide to Superhero Level SEO. And those of you that know me know that I'm into movies, so let's switch to a more movie-appropriate title slide. And let's call it Automotive SEO as well. So it's Ant-Man's Guide to Superhero Level Automotive SEO. I'm Greg Gifford. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at SearchLab Digital. We're a boutique digital marketing agency that focuses mostly on auto dealers, simply because of the fact that I've been in automotive for forever, more than 15 years at this point. I have a weekly video series. I want to make sure you check it out. It happens every Tuesday morning on our blog, on social media, and on YouTube. It's called Local Search Tuesdays. It's short 3 to 5 minute clips on awesome things about SEO and how to make your dealership better. And throughout the presentation, I will have some links to videos for certain topics. They'll be in blue in the bottom right corner, just like that link right there. So watch for those links. They'll have a little video thumbnail next to it, lets you know that at that point you can dig in and learn even more about that particular tactic or strategy that I'm talking about. And this is a goofy photo of me speaking at MozCon, which is a huge digital marketing conference in Seattle. I'm lucky enough to be a really popular conference presenter, so I get to travel all over the world speaking at conferences. I keynoted a conference in Bali in December. I'm actually leaving after I film this today to go to keynote a conference in the Netherlands. So I am lucky, but sometimes it's unlucky because you see some of those presenters at some of these conferences where maybe it's great information they're sharing, but they're not too great at presenting, and they'll typically stand locked behind the podium. They won't move at all. And you'll kind of just watch the back or the side of their head because they're watching their own slides and just reading off their slides. And even worse, there's no art at all. There's no screen captures. There's no artistic design to the slides. It's just plain white with black Arial font. And they pack every slide with tons and tons of bullet points. So they're just sitting there reading bullet points to the entire presentation. And not only is that no fun to watch, it's a scientifically proven fact that bullet points kill kittens. So today we're going to keep all of the kitties safe. And you guys have all seen me before. You know that I love movies. I have almost 900 movies in my iTunes library. I've got both arms and one of my legs sleeved up with movie portrait tattoos. So I always love to share my love of movies when I talk about digital marketing. So there is a theme to every presentation. Today's theme is superhero movies. We've got 114 different superhero movie references in the presentation, with at least one movie for every year in the last 50 years. If you haven't seen the movie, there is attribution over on the right side, although I just noticed my designer didn't include it on this slide. But at the end, you're going to have a kick-ass list of movies to watch, besides learning a lot about how to be awesome at SEO. So let's get this going. Why the long face? Are you spending too much time looking up at other dealerships that rank higher in search results? You don't have to have a huge brain to succeed in SEO, even though sometimes it seems like it's a bunch of magic or voodoo. It's really not. I've got some hot tips to share with you today that will help you crush your competitors so that you'll kick ass in search results. Now, I've been talking about local SEO starting at Digital Dealer 11 years ago, and I've done it every year. I've spoken at multiple DMSC events talking about local SEO as well. And even though Google releases a ton of updates, there were over 3,000 updates last year, the basics of what you need to do to succeed have mostly stayed the same over time. So I've been telling everyone what to do for 10 years, yet most dealers still suck at SEO, and most automotive SEO companies still suck at SEO. You have to realize that in today's world, SEO isn't just optimizing to show up higher in Google. It's about optimizing for people and optimizing the customer experience on your website. We know that people shop around. We know that nobody sits down and goes to Google and buys from the first dealership that they find. So if we know that people are going to be looking at your competitors, part of doing SEO is optimizing that experience to make sure that your experience and your website are better than what the competition offers. And the problem with doing SEO in-house, though, is that most dealers simply aren't set up to handle SEO themselves. You have to have a full-time employee that their entire job is just doing SEO. And most of the time, dealerships are going to have an internet manager kind of do it on the side. Or sometimes you'll have a marketing manager over the group, or maybe even a marketing team over the group, but they're doing SEO and paid search and print and traditional and everything else. And SEO is really a full-time job. And other vendors don't do it the right way because it's too much effort. They want to do the least amount of work possible so that they make more money. So instead of telling you again how SEO works and what you should do, I'm going to share some different information today. I'm going to start with some unique data from a lot of research that we've been doing lately, because if you know what other dealers are doing or what they're not doing, it's going to help you be better at SEO. And after I share the research that shows what's happening in the real world, I'm going to share some advanced level tips, because come on, this is DMSC. It's not a standard conference. I want to help you dominate your local competition. So we've been working on a massive Google Business Profile research project since last fall. We pulled over 1.6 million data points on, it says over 8,500. It's really about 8,715, I think, something around there. Google Business Profiles across 3 different verticals, because Google treats things slightly differently between verticals, and we wanted to see how those differences shook out. So when I looked at just the car dealers, so we did car dealers, cannabis dispensaries, and personal injury attorneys. When I looked at just the car dealers, I removed all of the department listings for parts and service because I only wanted to look at the primary sales focus listing. And we had 2,732 Google Business Profiles. And the way that we came up with that number, we ran the following keywords: Ford dealer, Chevrolet dealer, Toyota dealer, Jeep dealer, Kia dealer, and used car dealer in each of those 14 cities. And then we looked at the map pack local finder results, which if you look at the map pack, it's the 3 results. You can click more locations, and then it will take you to everything in the area that matches the intent of your search query. We looked at positions 1 through 20 in each of those cities for each of those keywords to see which dealers showed up. Now we're about to start pushing out the final results of the study in the next month or 2. But in the meantime, I thought it would be cool to share some of the important data that we've started to see as we've parsed through all of these data points. Now, keep in mind, if we're coming back and looking here, there's only 6 things that we looked at as primary kind of focused keywords, 5 different brands, and then used car dealers. So we all know your primary category should be the dealer that you are, but we saw 29 different primary categories. And notice the second one there, 19.1%, almost 20%, 1 out of 5 car dealers in the data set just had car dealer as their primary category. That's the most generic thing that you can choose. And it's really important to get your initial primary category right, because your primary category is more weighted in the algorithm. So you need to be really strategic here. Watch this video. It explains exactly what you need to do to choose the right category. And also there are 10 slots for categories available. So you could put up to 10 different categories, and there are more than 10 categories that apply to parts, more than 10 that apply to service, and more than 10 that apply to sales. So you should for sure have 9 or 10 categories selected. But 27.4% of the dealerships only had a single category selected. So you want to make sure you've got at least 9 or 10. There's a video right there that walks you through the categories that you should be selecting when you're trying to pick out the categories for each of your listings. And there's a really neat interactive category list at Plepper Tools, which is a local SEO tool company. So if you go to that link right there, basically what you do is you enter in a category, and then the tool will come back and spit out a list of the categories that are most commonly chosen along with that primary category. So in other words, if you put in Ford dealer, it's going to tell you which categories are most often chosen along with Ford dealer. So it's a really cool way to check out what categories are available, because you can't make them up. You have to use the predefined categories. And if you're only looking in your own competitive bubble at what the competition is doing, you may not realize that there's some other ones out there that are pretty powerful. And then we could look at reviews, since that's part of the Google Business Profile system. And we saw that the average across all of those 2,700 main profiles for car dealers, the average reviews was 979.5. So call it 980. Now, does this mean you need 980 reviews if you want to rank well? No, not at all. I'm not telling you that. But that's the average. So if your dealership only has a couple of hundred, that means you're falling well below the average. But you don't have to have that many reviews. The algorithm actually doesn't care how many reviews you have, other than it does care that you have more than your competitors. So that's really all you need to concentrate on, is outpacing your competitors. But you don't want to get too many more than your competitors, because it looks fake. I was talking to a dealership in Atlanta, and they had like 3,600 reviews. They were all legitimate. They were really good at reputation management. But the problem is, in the entire metro market, the next closest dealership only had about 1,200. And then most of the dealerships were in the 500 to 700 range. So think about it. If you're a customer and you're shopping for a car and you're looking at all the dealerships in town and everyone is in the 500 to 700 range, and this one dealership is at 3,600, you don't think, wow, these guys are awesome. That's clearly where I want to buy. Human nature has you think, geez, they're probably faking reviews. It stands out. It doesn't look great. So don't get too many more. Just make sure that your acquisition pace, how many reviews you're getting, is equal to or slightly faster than local competitors. And then looking at the website link, everyone, not just me, everyone has been talking for years about how you need UTM tracking on your website link. And only about half of the dealers had it. And this is a big problem, because a lot of the mobile traffic that comes into your website doesn't pass referral information to Google Analytics, which means Google Analytics is going to classify that traffic as direct traffic. So if you add the UTM tracking onto your website link, it forces Google Analytics to track that traffic correctly and attribute it to organic. We've done this for a few dealerships in the past and seen a 20 to even 40% increase in organic traffic overnight. That doesn't mean we did any magical SEO. It just means that 20 to 40% of that store's traffic was misclassified as direct and not as organic. So watch this video. It walks you through what to do. One important thing to note, though, a lot of people in automotive that talk about adding UTM tracking will tell you to use Google as the source, organic as the medium, and a campaign variable to let you know that it came from your Google business profile. That's actually not the right way to do it. You need to use something else as source, whether you call it GMB, you don't need to change it if that's what you had in the past, or GBP or Google Business or Google Local or whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. The reason you don't want to do it as Google, because if you do it that way, you're going to have to go in and use a secondary dimension to see that traffic. And if you use something different, as soon as you go into your source medium report, you'll be able to tell the difference between clicks that happened organically, where you're showing up organically, and clicks that happened on your Google business profile in Google Maps or in the map pack. And make sure you're putting UTM tracking on every link in your business profile, not just the website link, but appointments, products, anything else that's there, and even your Google posts. So you want to be able to tell what's going on with the traffic that's coming in and make sure it's properly attributed. And then the questions and answers section is huge. It's been around since 2017. Most dealerships don't even know that it's there, or they don't do anything with it. We saw an average of 6 questions asked to each dealership in the Q&A section. And the reason that this is important is it's basically a community discussion widget that lets anybody ask you a question, and any random person can answer it for you, and that should terrify you. The big problem is that customers think it's chat. They think it's some sort of instant messaging program where someone asks a question and somebody's sitting there at the dealership waiting to answer that question, but it's really just a community discussion widget that allows anyone in the community to answer the question for you. So the really important thing to do is to load your own common questions. We call it a pre-site FAQ page. No one's going to go to your website and read through an FAQ page to see, out of the 50 questions that you listed, if their question is there and maybe an answer is there. But they will ask by chat or by text, or they will ask by the Q&A widget. And the really cool thing about the way that it works is if someone goes to type in a question and a similar question has been asked and answered in the past, then Google will automatically supply an answer instantly, which is an awesome pre-site experience for them and makes it more likely that they're going to convert. The most questions that we saw in this study was a Ford dealer that we found that had 108 questions in their Q&A section. Now, questions can receive multiple answers, and whichever answer shows up as primary is the one that has the most thumbs up or the most upvotes. So when you put your answers in, you should upvote those answers to make sure that the dealership owner answer is always displayed as the primary answer. And remember, we saw an average of just over 6 questions per dealership, but we saw an average of only 1 with the primary answer coming from the dealership. So that's a problem. Or another way to say it, which is a little bit more, I guess, interesting. There were 16,843 questions in the data set that went to car dealers, but only 2,800 of them had a primary answer from the owner. So that's really not great. But like I said, the reason you really need to concentrate on this is to get your common questions in there and those questions answered, with the primary owner answer being the one that's most upvoted. So that's what's going to be displayed. And then when people type in a question, Google will automatically give them their answer even before they're done typing the question. It's really cool. And Google posts are important as well. They're basically free ads that show in your Google business profile. And in the last 12 months, more than half of the dealerships didn't publish a single Google post. I did a Whiteboard Friday episode for Moz, which is a really big, really famous SEO tool company. And they have a series called Whiteboard Fridays where certain experts can come in and share information. So this is a video that I did for them about a year ago that is 15 minutes of densely packed information about how to be successful with Google posts. So go check that one out. Most importantly, do not treat posts like social media. And this is where dealers always screw up. You don't want to think about it the same way. Social media is something that people choose to follow you on, or they're looking to see if you have content that's worthy of following. Google posts are truly ads. They are ads that show in your profile that help distinguish you from other options in the area. People are seeing your Google business profile before they've even been to your website. So you don't want to put social fluff up there. You want to put something promotionally focused. So you really do need to treat it like an ad. Don't share delivery photos. Happy customers with their cars, that's okay for social media. I wouldn't say great anymore, but if you want to do that, cool, do it on social. But that doesn't do anything for you on Google Posts. And never create a Google post talking about one specific vehicle, because those posts will stay there for 6 months and that vehicle's probably going to be sold tomorrow or even next week. So that's not really going to be very effective. Plus, someone looking for you by name and finding your Google business profile, or even finding you in the map pack or the local finder, you don't know that they're looking for a vehicle. They may be looking for service. And if they are looking for a vehicle, how do you know they're looking for that specific vehicle? It's too specific, so don't do it. The biggest thing that people screw up on, besides the social media thing, is they're only paying attention to the full post, the image and all of the text, but no one's going to see that if the thumbnail isn't compelling. So you've got to pay attention to what's in the thumbnail, because if the thumbnail isn't great, nobody's going to click on it to see the full offer. But image cropping is really wonky and inconsistent. So I've created a Photoshop guide that will give you better control over what's in the thumbnail, because if like half of your truck is cropped out, it's not a very compelling photo. So you can download the PSD at that link right there. It's going to look like this. So anything within the white grid is safe, and then everything else will show up when they click and see the full post. And then I mentioned earlier, and you all should know, you should have a separate Google business profile for your service department and a separate Google business profile for your parts department. And they should be nested under your primary listing so that they're explicitly listed as departments. And only a little over half of the dealerships had that set up. You should definitely have a separate parts and a separate service listing. It will help you show up much better for those specific search intents. It's also really cool because it displays all of the different hours on your primary profile, which is a better customer experience. And it lets you get your service reviews on the service listing and your sales reviews on the sales listing. So everything works better both for customers and for Google. You are allowed to have a separate department listing for service and parts and collision or body shop if you do that kind of work. You're not allowed to set up a separate listing for your used cars department or for your finance department, or for like a, hey, we buy cars, or car buying, or trade-in appraisal, or anything like that. It's only parts, service, maybe collision, and primary sales. When you're setting these up, you don't want to mix categories between the two. All the categories on the primary listing should be related to sales. All the categories on your service listing should be related to service. All the categories on your parts listing should be related to parts. And then vehicles for sale has recently been renamed. It used to be cars for sale. That's the live inventory list that shows in your Google Business Profile. There is no reason for 29%, 30%, 3 out of 10 dealers didn't have it. There's just no reason to have it, or no reason not to have it. It's out there. All the vendors, almost all of them, offer it for free now. It's very inexpensive for the partner that makes that happen with Google. So if you're paying more than $75, there are still some unscrupulous vendors out there charging $200, $300, $400 a month just to have your cars displayed on your Google Business Profile. Don't get ripped off. It should be free or be less than $100 a month. Now, besides that research, I've got some other real world audit research to share with you. We have a scoring matrix that I've been using at 20 group meetings for years and years and years. Then we also use the scoring matrix for hand raisers at conferences or for potential dealerships that we might end up working with, so that we have a better idea of what opportunities there are with that dealership to help them get better visibility. So I decided to grab everything that we've scored since the beginning of last year. So the beginning of January of 2022. And there were 690 dealerships in this data set. Now, the matrix is like a mini SEO audit, and it scores the 4 major areas that affect your organic visibility. And those scores are weighted to approximate the importance of each of those areas to Google's local algorithm. So the most important area is the on-site score. That's the content on your site and how that content is optimized. And it's a maximum point value of 44 points. And then we've got a score for your inbound links, which is links pointed from other websites to your website. That's a maximum point value of 10 points. Then we've got a Google Business Profile score, which is clearly your Google Business Profile and how it's optimized. That's a max point value of 32 points. And then we've got a score for your reviews with a max value of 14 points. And we're looking at your reviews on Google and Yelp and how you respond to those reviews. It's important to note that this scores on tactics, not on strategy. And people use those interchangeably, but there's an important distinction. Strategy is where you're going, and tactics are the steps that you take to get there. So they're not the same thing. Because we're looking at basic tactics, it's more universal. It can't be refuted. Let's say you're using a digital marketing provider and you were to get your site scored and it says that your SEO is really bad, and you took it back to that provider and it was on the strategy side. They could very easily say, oh, that's SearchLab's way of doing SEO. Our way is better. You could ignore that. It doesn't mean anything. But because we do it basic tactics, anyone that knows SEO is going to agree that these are the things that need to be done. And because I use this mostly at 20 groups, it helps uncover opportunities at the 20 group of things that could be done better, and lets you know if you're doing things yourself, how are you doing? Or if you're using a vendor, how is that vendor doing and could it be better? So I could look at some of the scores here, and the averages that we saw looked kind of like this: 2.5 out of 44, 1.3 out of 10, 9.6 out of 32, and 1.4 out of 14. The highest score, though, of all of the 690 was a Volkswagen dealer that scored an 83.6. Now, it's basically impossible to get 100 points. There are certain things in there, like if you're on a dealer.com site, you can't put alt text on your images. So you're not going to be able to get a full, point value. But, this is pretty good. You should really shoot for upper 60s to mid 80s is realistically where you should be. But the lowest score that we saw was a Lincoln dealer who actually scored negative 58.4, because some of the things in there, if you get it right, you get a point or a partial point. And if you get it wrong, you just don't get points. But some of the things, if you get it wrong, it's bad enough that it's probably hurting your visibility, or it potentially is hurting your visibility, maybe, and you'll actually get negative points. And these guys were really not great. And then we can break down which website providers were in this data set of 690 dealers. So no surprise, most of the sites were dealer.com, more than a third of them. But that makes sense. Dealer.com's been in the OEM game for forever, and they're in every OEM approved list. And then Dealer Inspire was second, Dealer on third. Synchro basically was next, but I aggregated everything that was small enough to really not be statistically relevant and put them all in other platforms. 'Cause can't really say, oh, if I'm looking at, this particular site provider and there are only 3 or 4 in the data set, that's not really enough to say that this provider is great or not. So we aggregated them all together. But then I can break down the scores per provider as well. Remember, dealer.com was a third of the sites, but dealer.com is way at the bottom of the list here. Dealer Inspire was by far the best, followed by Dealer On, followed by the aggregate of the other platforms, followed by dealer.com, and then Synchro down at the bottom. But we're looking at areas that don't really have anything to do with the website. So let's drop those out and just look at the on-site section, which is the content on your site and how that content is optimized. And remember, this was out of a possible 44 points. The average on Dealer Inspire was just 7.3. The average on Dealer On was 3.9. Dealer.com came in just under a point. And then Synchro and other platforms were actually negative scores. Now, if we're looking at the overall of the 690, the score was only a 17.7 out of 100. So if we're going back to grade school and you're doing it as a percentage of like A, B, C, D, F, now this is a low F. We're at basically 18% instead of a 90% being an A. So that's not great. If I'm looking at the specific areas, the average on-site score was just 2.5 out of 44. Which again, percentage-wise is only 5.7% out of 100. And the link score was 1.3 out of 10. That's easy math, that's 13%. The average Google Business Profile score was 9.6 out of 32. So we're up to a 30%. But that's what most dealers handle themselves. It's usually not handled by their SEO provider. And then reputation management, 4.3 out of 14, just above 30%. So again, something the dealers handle looks a lot better. But the percentages really show where most people are missing the boat when it comes to SEO. The content on your site and how that content is optimized is literally the most important thing to Google. It's almost half of the possible 100 points that you could get because nothing else matters if you don't have good content and a good website experience. But it's the lowest average score. We're at 30% on GBP and reviews and 13% on links and only 5.7% for the content on the site. Some of the problems that we saw as we were going through all of these mini audits. Whenever you optimize your pages, you should have a single city listed in the title tag and a single city listed in the H1 heading. Listing multiple cities doesn't do anything for you. You're not going to show up in 3 cities just because you have 3 cities in the title tag. Google knows exactly where you're located. So you shouldn't have multiple cities in your title tag or in your H1 heading. We also see people not matching cities between the H1 heading and the title tag and other page elements, or even not matching the same keywords, which is just basic SEO 101 stuff. Near me pages are also stupid. Are you looking for a Ford dealer near me? A, that sounds awkward. And B, when someone types in something near me, they are explicitly telling Google they want the closest results to their physical location in the real world. So if you're the closest Ford dealer to that person, you're going to show up if they look for Ford dealer near me, whether you have near me on the page or not. And just because you have a page that says Ford dealer near me isn't going to get you to show up in those searches if you're not the closest dealer to the person that's doing the search. So those pages are kind of useless. And we see a bunch of dealers churning out 30 or 40 pages of Ford dealer city 1, Ford dealer city 2, Ford dealer city 3, Ford dealer city 4. Again, that stuff doesn't really work. So don't do that stuff. Every page should have at least one photo. We see a lot of pages that don't have photos. We see a lot of dealers treating Google posts like social media, which I told you was bad. We see a lot of really, really horrible responses to bad reviews. It's important to respond well to bad reviews. Those responses really kind of dictate how people are going to think about you because people go right to reading your bad reviews. So if you'd like to get your site scored, we're happy to score it for you. You can just point your phone at the URL or at the QR code right there and send us your URL. There's a little note section. If you're part of a group and you'd like multiple sites scored within your group, then just add those additional URLs in the notes section and we'll get those scored for you so that you can kind of see how you stack up to some of these averages. Now, before we go in and talk about how to actually optimize things, we need to talk about the really broken system. And this is the only vertical in the world. And again, I travel all over the world. It's really the only vertical that dictates which providers businesses can use for SEO and paid search. And the OEM approved program is not in your best interest. because those vendors have to work with any dealer that wants to sign up, which means most likely if you're in a larger market, you've got competition using the same provider to do SEO and PPC as you. And once you get into the system, you have to give a chunk of that money to Shift Digital or Internet Brands or Ford Direct or whoever's managing that program, which means you have reduced profitability. So the only way they make that up is to squeeze even more and more dealers onto each team member. So if you were to talk to some of these team members at some of these larger providers, you would find out that each individual person has to work on over 100 dealerships a month. There's only 160 hours of working time, which means after your monthly phone call, you get maybe 30 minutes of work. How's that going to help? And plus, once you're in the program, you're locked into very specific service packages. And remember, Google released over 3,000 updates last year, but these guys can't update their packages. They have to stay the same for everybody. And even worse, because of that, they're giving exactly the same cookie cutter service to every single dealership that they work with, which means a Ford dealer in Dallas, which is the most dense Ford market in the country. There's like 20 dealerships all within about a 15-minute drive of each other. They get the same SEO service as a Ford dealer in Wyoming who doesn't have a competing Ford dealer for 150 miles in any direction. Those are two vastly different situations that need vastly different strategy and tactics. But if you're using an OEM-approved provider, guess what? You're going to get exactly the same thing. So how is that going to help your dealership? If you want to win in today's market, you got to have a customized SEO strategy. And those vendors are using the same strategies and tactics that they've been using for years. And they do traditional SEO, not local SEO. So they're targeting Google's regular algorithm, not Google's local algorithm, which is what it uses to return search results related to car dealers. Now there's overlap between the signals that matter. If we were going to draw out a Venn diagram, it would look kind of like this. So doing some SEO is going to help you, but only the little green bit there in the middle is what's benefiting your dealership, where if you're working with the vendor or doing it in-house as local SEO, 100% of your efforts are helping. It's important to realize that that local algorithm truly is different from the traditional algorithm, and it's more complex because the local algorithm includes things that the normal, regular, traditional algorithm doesn't include. And we know that car dealers need local SEO, not because I just said it a minute ago, but because if you go do a search for something related to a dealership, those searches are automatically localized. So in this case, all I did was search Ford dealer. I did not say near me. I did not say I'm in Plano when I did this search, Plano, Texas. I didn't say Plano. I didn't say Dallas. I didn't say anything. I just said Ford dealer. And I get a map pack. And if you get the map pack, that means Google's using the local algorithm because Google says that this query has local intent. So let's talk a little bit about where that local algorithm is displaying search results. So you know the potential areas where you're going to be showing up if you're doing local SEO, or even if you're not, you're just trying to show up. Still doesn't matter. The local algorithm is in play. So the clearest indicator is that there is a map pack displayed. But then at the bottom of the map pack, you can click more locations, and that takes you to the local finder page, which looks exactly like Google Maps. Google Maps is also powered by the local algorithm. But then below the map pack, you got the 3 results in the map and then 10 blue links, but it's not the regular algorithm. Those results are also powered by Google's local algorithm. And I like to use pizza delivery as an example of how local SEO actually works. So watch the video, it explains it. But basically, the thought process is this. If you were sitting at your dealership in the office and you typed 2 words into Google, pizza delivery, you get a list of all the pizza spots right there by your dealership. But then if you go home and try the same search at home with the same 2 words, you'd get totally different search results, even though you didn't type in a phrase like near me or nearby or a city. That's not possible with regular SEO. But with local SEO, the position of the searcher in the real world and the proximity to the potential search results will affect what that person sees. So that explains how it works. This example explains why you need it. Simple back of the napkin kind of bar math, let's call it that. Let's say there's 5 new car dealers and 15 used car dealers in your town. That's 20 dealerships fighting for most of the important phrases. On page 1, there's 13 spots because you've got 3 in the map pack and 10 organic. But you're going to have AutoTrader, Cars.com. You take those out. There's probably 7 or 8 spots on page 1. If there's 20, that means 12 people aren't on page 1, and there's only 10 spots on page 2. So 2 dealerships are all the way back on page 3 where no one will ever find them. And that's a really basic example, most of you are probably in much more crowded markets where there could be up to 300 or 400 dealers fighting for those 7 or 8 spots on page 1. That's why SEO is so darn important. And it's really important for you to keep a solid understanding of how this stuff works. Whether you're doing it yourself in-house or whether you're working with a vendor, you still need to know how this stuff works. And the best way to do that is to pay attention to an annual study called the Local Search Ranking Factor Study. Now, nobody knows exactly what's in Google's algorithm. Google doesn't even know, actually, because they use machine learning. But if you were going to take the 5 best SEOs in the world and have them all optimize your dealership website, they would all do it differently, but they'd all touch the same elements. So the thought process behind this study is they take the top experts across the globe in local SEO. And this year it was 44 people. They send out a big survey about positive factors, negative factors, foundational factors, competitive factors, etc. And then they aggregate all the answers and you get a really solid understanding of what things really affect local visibility. And the numbers I'm about to show you are from this year's study, which was just released at the end of March. So you get a pie chart that shows you the factors that influence your visibility in Google Maps or in the map pack. Notice how big the Google Business Profile section green is there. That's where all those location and proximity factors live. Then you get another chart that shows you the factors that influence your visibility below the map pack in the organic listings. And notice the green Google Business Profile section is a lot smaller, and now it's more about the content on your site and the links pointed to your site. So it's really your guide. It's like your Bible for the signals that you need to be paying attention to if you want to show up better. If we boil Google down to the simplest concept, Google is really just pattern detection. So when you're doing SEO, you're giving your dealership a more attractive pattern. But like I said at the beginning, it's also about improving the user experience on your site, because you've got to have better information and a better experience so that people will remember you, because they very rarely will convert the first time they come to your site. In other words, you want to give people a better reason to visit your site and to come back in the future. Because if you've got the same generic BS content as all the other dealers in town, why is anybody going to care? Your website needs to make it clear to everyone why you're awesome and why everyone should buy from you and not from a competitor. Another simple concept. The best way to think about SEO, if you want to show up as a search result when somebody types a particular phrase into Google, then you need a page of content on your website that's about that singular concept. And that page needs to be the best answer in the local area to the question that that searcher is asking. And the best content is going to answer all of the subsequent questions that the searcher is going to ask once they get their initial answer. So when you're optimizing your site, a couple of quick tips. You need to optimize each page of your site for a single keyword and a single city. Don't do multiple keywords. Don't do multiple cities. When you're creating content, you want to target all sections of the funnel. Most dealers are only like, I don't want to write content that's just about selling cars. Well, that's the bottom of the funnel. And if you're only writing content that's for the bottom of the funnel, you're missing out on the mid and early funnel customers that are doing research and trying to figure out where they want to do business. So you need to create content to target all areas of the funnel. Share that informational content. Share those blog posts that help people decide and push them in the right direction. And don't expect that you're going to get leads from them, because you won't. You'll get leads further down the road when they come back and convert on another page. So most dealers want to expand and show up outside of their area. But if you're not owning your backyard first, that's not going to work. In other words, if your SEO is not solid enough that you're dominating the search results in the town where you're actually located, where your address is, then you're not really going to be able to beat dealerships in nearby cities. So own your backyard first and then go try to expand. And when we're talking about links, if you want to get more links to your site, you really should. It's one of the most important things, but make sure that your vendor's not skipping it if you're using a vendor, because most vendors in automotive don't do any link building. And that's one of the most important elements. And anything that you do in the community is an opportunity to get awesome links. So make sure you're paying attention to all community initiatives and taking the second step to follow up and get links for those things. When it comes to reviews, you want to make sure you're making it very easy for people to leave reviews, because most people don't understand where to go and what to do. So make it easy, and then make sure you ask every single customer for a review. Watch this video. It walks through a lot of important details. When you're responding to a bad review, remember that the response isn't for the person that left the review. It's for every future potential customer that wants to see how you handle bad situations. So you should be reaching out to that person in the real world offline to make that situation right. And your response lets to know the rest of the world know what happened. Don't put the generic, hey, I'm Greg, I'm the service manager. Please call me and tell me more about this. You look bored, you look uninterested, you look like you don't care. With your Google Business Profile, if you've got problems, maybe you're suspended, maybe something's changing or something's not working, don't go to Google Business Profile support. They're horrible. They don't actually understand a lot of the unique rules that Google has put in place specifically for car dealers. So instead, you want to go post on the Google Business Profile community forum. Every Google product has a community forum, and this one, just like all the others, is staffed by volunteers. And those volunteers will help you. But once someone has answered things consistently well, they get invited to be what's called a product expert. They have a little badge that means they've been endorsed by Google so that you know if a product expert is helping you, they're telling you the right stuff. And then once you're in that program and you continue to progress through it, when you're at gold or platinum level, you actually have direct line of communication to the Google Business Profile team. And I am a platinum product expert. I'm the only product expert in automotive, but I'm a platinum expert. So I actually have a weekly call with Google and the Google Business Profile team to talk about these things. So go there, create a new thread. One of the product experts will be able to escalate it and get you help. Make sure you have your separate department listings set up. Make sure you're using Google Posts correctly. Make sure you're seeding your own questions and answering those questions and upvoting those answers so that you'll stand out from the competition. Remember that SEO is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You've got to give it time to work. A lot of dealers will bail on a provider after a month or two because they expect to be number one. It doesn't happen that fast. You should expect to start to see traction at around 6 to 8 months. And then you should see the really big results at 12 to 14 months. Thanks so much for sitting through that absolute fire hose of information. Hopefully, you're not going to feel down and depressed when you're thinking about SEO because you've got a better handle on what's going to work. And you'll be able to use all of these hot tips. I know I used that same joke earlier, but this is actually the second Ghost Rider movie. I just really think it's a horrible, horrible bad pun, so I had to use it again. But you'll no longer be the underdog when it comes to local search results, and your dealership will be super happy. Thanks so much for watching Ant-Man's Guide to Being an SEO Superhero. If you've got any questions, you can email me right there. I have an open email policy. I'd be happy to send you the slides. I will always answer any questions and not try to sell you stuff. And you should definitely get the slides because at the end, there is a list of all the movies by order of release date. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for sticking around to watch the whole thing. That's definitely all the time we have left for this week's episode. So you know what that means. Put your hand on the screen right here. We totally just high-fived because you learned something awesome. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week for another episode of Local Search Tuesdays.